Okay, we're being live streamed. Let's get started. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2023 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2022, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Ms. Adams?
Here.
Ms. Cripe?
Here.
Mr. DeLuca?
Here.
Ms. Engel?
Here.
Mayor Daffis?
Here, thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has a discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting. And whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provisions of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee, the Township of Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in a formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise described by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Cripe?
Yes.
Luca?
Yes.
Ms. Engel?
Yes.
Mayor Daffis?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Please join us in a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, folks, to our first of two currently scheduled budget workshops. The job here is to adopt a budget for 2023. And the way that we do it is like this. We come before the public and we go department by department, looking at requests, looking how they compare to previous requests, to appropriations in the previous year, and hearing from our department heads about their respective goals for the new year and their accomplishments in the last year. This is the first of two scheduled budget workshops currently. I think there will be a third where we will probably only look at the capital requests and make final decisions then. This is a workshop, so this is the beginning, but this is a great opportunity. We hope we have members of the public to engage with us, to ask questions. This is how you find out how things are done and what they cost, and who is responsible for what. It's a wonderful opportunity to engage with us, and we hope that we have some members of the public with us. There will be a public comment and only one public comment period at the end of our workshops tonight. Our agenda for tonight was previously published, as I said in the opening statement. We're going to hear first from our two business districts, Springfield Avenue Partnership, followed by Maplewood Village Alliance. Then we'll go into public safety, police, and OEM, and then into administration. From there, we'll hear from health, township clerk, public works, and engineering will close us out for the evening. And I presume that public works and engineering will be pretty hefty, right? That's one of our biggest departments with the largest capital requests. All right, so let's get started. If our business district managers are ready to go, we're going to open the floor to the Springfield Avenue Partnership. Actually, before we do that, I know that our interim administrator has a few things he'd like to say.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I do have a quick presentation just to give everyone an overview as Bailey goes ahead and shows that. First thing I want to do is highlight the budget team and everyone that's involved in putting together the 2023 budget. There, of course, is a core budget team consisting of myself, Assistant Township Administrator Bailey Barnett, and Joe Cologe, our CFO. Department heads are also intimately involved. They go over all the numbers. We have multiple meetings with them and have been refining the budget throughout this whole process. Additionally, we meet with and talk to our community partners and hear what their needs are and get their feedback on the budget. And then, of course, we bring things to the subcommittees and the township committee as we're doing this evening to hear everyone's feedback. This, of course, is not a final product. This is where we are at a point in time. We are very much interested in hearing your feedback and any other feedback from the community so we can continue to shape this budget prior to its eventual adoption. The next slide, please. When I look at putting together a budget and I consider a budget basically a list of choices that have to be made, I always like to put together a number of goals. And the 3 goals that I put together and shared with department heads in putting together this budget were the following. Number 1, appropriately fund operational and capital needs. Number 2, address high turnover and inadequate salary ranges. And number 3 is to minimize any tax increase. Of course, some of those are in direct competition with others, and that's the balancing act that we have to find together as we go through this budget process. Let's look a brief budget history. You can see the growth of the overall expenditure since 2018, somewhere around 45 million back there, and now we're just a little under 52 million. So I just want to put in the last budget. So I just want to put everything out there for context in what you're about to see. Next slide, please. Now, the budget that's been sent out to you, quick question is that everyone asks is, where's all the money going? Here's a quick look based on departments and also various functional areas. You'll find that this is not going to change year over year that much. For any municipality, there's certainly usually a majority that goes to public safety, debt service, and pensions. Those are the 3 big ones that you'll see in any municipality. Next slide, please. On the flip side, where does all the revenue come from? You can see easily 2/3 of our revenue comes from our municipal tax, and then the pie is divvied up in a bunch of other smaller slices. We are utilizing or proposing to utilize some semblance of a higher amount of surplus than we have in prior years, and Joe is going to talk a little bit about that in a few slides. Next slide, please. In fact, this will be where Joe takes it away for a few minutes and goes over some of the things that we're proposing in terms of using that surplus fund balance, and also some of the pitfalls and things that you have to be aware of as we go down or potentially go down that road. So, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Schuster. So starting with this line that we're looking at here, and Mr. Schuster was operating under the constraints of trying to create a budget that was going to go up 2% per the levy cap. So this shows us that we had some issues in terms of EMS fee that's no longer going to be available to us, as that is now part of the SCFD. The Claris, which was operating as a pilot, last year's revenue from the Claris was $208,000, is coming off the books. Claris is now going to be paying full amount of taxes. And the Baker Street pilot is now coming on board. So the $85,000 in taxes we received last year are no longer available to us. And this is their first year of their pilot where they're paying 0% of what their tax levy would have been. Fortunately, we retired 2 bonds last year. And so the net reduction for debt service is coming out to be roughly 1.5 million. We reduced it by 2, but interest costs have risen on our bond anticipation notes. Next slide, Bailey. So because we built this budget based on a 2% levy cap, and there are items outside of the 2% levy cap that we are allowed to include, and that typically is what causes confusion for people who say, my taxes went up by 4%, but I thought there's a 2% cap. These are items that ordinarily would push us above the 2% cap, and would be included as part of the tax levy. However, in order to create a budget proposed with a 2% increase, we are eliminating the deferred charges, which have increased by about $162,000. That is coming from both the reval and from the master plan that we passed emergency appropriations for. Our pension contributions increased by over $795,000, and we anticipate in 2024 that trend will continue. And our state health benefits plan also increased by over $800,000. Based on what I've been hearing from other CFOs, they're going to be in dire straits as the towns that have a good claim ratio are jumping ship now, and that's going to leave them with towns that don't have such a good ratio. And so likely we're going to see another large increase in state health benefits plan in 2024. Next slide, please, Bailey. So this is ultimately how we managed to create a 2% increase in the tax levy. We utilized all available fund balance that we had. We basically increased it by $3.5 million over the 1.5 we had the year before, which is a 232% increase. And then because we are utilizing fund balance, those items that we saw before that ordinarily would be included in a budget will go into a cap bank so that we can utilize it in 2024 when we need to catch up. Next slide, please. So this gives us an idea of how we were able to build fund balance. In June of 2021, looking at the table or the chart on the right-hand side, in June of 2021, we received our first tranche of the ARP funding, which was roughly $1.3 million. In August of 22, they sent us our second and final payment of $1.3 million. So all realized, we have about $2.6 million in ARP money. Last year's budget in 2022 was balanced by using $480,000 of that in the municipal budget and $72,000 of that in the pool budget. But then the issue that we have with the ARP money that is available is that we floated a pandemic note, which we still have to pay off $1.2 million worth. We have likewise about $70,000 for the pool doing the same pandemic note. And we still have our IDA emergency note because we didn't collect any of our insurance money the year that IDA occurred of $600,000 worth of payments. So if we kind of just look at that one side of the column, we sort of see that the ARP money is spoken for, and we're actually going to be $70,000 short, but there's specific accounting things we can do to change that. Moving over to the left side of the column, we've received last year almost $800,000 in FEMA payments, a little over $800,000 in insurance payments, and that brought in $1.6 million. So when we take a look at the $1.6 million we got from IDA, and we take a look at the $1.3 million that we got from ARP, we create a one-time infusion of surplus of $2.9 million. And that is essentially what has enabled us to utilize such a large fund balance number. Looking at the other items of outstanding claims with FEMA and outstanding claims with JIF, having a conversation earlier this afternoon, it would appear that of the 2.9 that's sitting with FEMA, a lot of that money is specifically earmarked for specific projects. So that $2.9 million, almost $3 million number is no longer accurate. And then our other issue is that the outstanding JIF claims, if they're paying for any of the claims that we also put in with FEMA, we'll need to reimburse FEMA that money. So essentially this budget, by relying so heavily on fund balance to keep it at a 2% increase, is placing a bet that we're going to get roughly $5 million coming in off of potential FEMA and JIF money. And we know that that's a losing bet right off the bat. So we'll need to have greater conversation about how we want to do that. Next slide, please. So this is the slide that usually the TC is most interested in, and we'll start out with the slide on the left. This proposed budget has a 2% increase as a rate increase. This year we had a 9.29 tax rate, and as presented, it would now be a 9.48 tax increase, or roughly a penny, almost 2 cents, a penny and 9/10 of a cent. So on the average assessed home with a 2% increase, you're looking at a roughly $95 increase annually, which means people's mortgages would be going up roughly $8 a month if they pay their taxes through their bank's escrow. On the right-hand side is the realistic picture of what this budget is actually doing. And if we were going to balance this budget, taking into account the additional pension payments, taking into account the more costly health benefits that are coming to us, taking into account the deferred charges that we have passed over the last couple of years, we would really need a rate increase of almost 6.5 cents instead of 2 cents, roughly 6.9% as an increase. But you can see that ultimately that causes a $320 increase for the year, and people's mortgages going up by $27 a month if we went full tilt. Next slide, please, Bailey. So this is just your public service announcement from your CFO that this is always our mantra. Reoccurring expenses need to equal reoccurring revenues. And that's what gives us the balance of a structurally sound budget. This budget, because it is only going up by 2%, is not structurally sound. It is pushing off some of our expenditures or expenses that we're going to need to pay into 2024 in order to achieve a 2% increase. And this budget is also heavily reliant upon one-time fees like the ARP money that we know are not going to come in because last year was our second and final payment for ARP money. So we have some work cut out for us with the budgets that have been presented, but as the slide previous had pointed out, we are somewhere in the range of 2% to 6.9%, and the decision is going to need to be made about what the TC is comfortable with in terms of putting together and adopting a budget for 2023. And it's back to Mr. Schuster now.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Appreciate the update, and we wanted to lay everything out for the township committee and make sure that everyone was aware of what the use of one-time revenue could possibly mean going forward. Again, we were striving to hit that 2% mark, but that's going to be a discussion going forward about where the TC wants to fall in terms of a tax rate and in terms of providing different services. Looking towards the expenditure side of the budget, want to give some operational highlights. Most of the operations are remaining unchanged. Department heads will go ahead and highlight certain areas of change, most of which I'm sure you're already aware of. We did get several requests in for new positions from departments. Most of those were denied at my level, with two exceptions. One, we are putting in for a crisis intervention social worker. That is going to be funded through dedicated cannabis revenue, so it's going to have a negative budget impact. The second one is a new position, which I thought was important to have a discussion about, and that was a communications position. It's become clear in my time here that the TC is incredibly focused on communications with the community. It's also become clear that it's something that we're not terribly good at internally, and that's not necessarily because we're not trying hard enough or because we're falling down all over the place. It's simply because it crosses all departments. There's no one person to go ahead and coordinate everything, and there's no dedicated resource in that area. So I put that position in the budget for us to go ahead and have that discussion and see if that would be a priority for the TC. Next slide. Another one of my goals was looking at addressing turnover. It's been no secret that it's been hard to hold on to positions, employees at certain salary levels. That's no different here than in any other municipality or over in the private sector. So we'll take a quick look at our cost of living rates, a salary study that we're proposing, and also funding for retroactive salary adjustments. Next slide, please. So as far as a cost of living adjustment, this is just looking back to 2020. The blue bar represents the percentage increase in Social Security, and the magenta bar increase shows what it is for Maplewood. And this really is for non-union who traditionally follow the CWA contract. So in 2020, we were actually a little higher than Social Security, 1.3 to 2.0%. But then starting in 21, you start to see a large difference where we are consistently 3% lower than Social Security in 2021, and then approximately 5% lower than Social Security in 2022. And that is having an impact in our industry, and we are seeing people leave for other positions at higher wages and having difficulty holding on to certain employees in certain positions. Next slide, please. So one of the proposals that you will see in the budget is a salary study to go ahead and look at non-union positions. And again, I'm not saying the problem doesn't exist with union positions, but those are subject to contract negotiation. So it's not something you could unilaterally change anyways. But we would review the salaries of these non-union positions and recommend market appropriate salary ranges. Those would then be taken to the TC. And if the TC is so inclined, they can implement that study. There is a dedicated pot of money in the budget to go ahead and retroactively implement the results of that study and give those appropriate salaries out per the study. Next slide, please. Mr. Cloutier already talked about taxes, so I'm not going to belabor this too much, but the tax increase that you've seen since 2019 is anywhere between 3% and 7.25%. The 2% increase that's shown here would mean an additional $722,000 in revenue. It would be the lowest tax increase since 2018, but again, the CFO has already gone through some of the perils that could occur if we go that low. Next slide, please. And that's just a graphical representation of what's happened since 2018 of what the municipal tax rate has been. That can be shown on the axis on the left, and on the axis and right on the right in yellow, that is the year-over-year percentage increase. And that was a very, very high level view of where we stand with the numbers right now. Again, we're just beginning this process with all of you, but we wanted to make sure that everyone was fully aware of what the situation was as we go in and discuss both the expenses, revenues, and the eventual tax rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Administrator Schuster or for our Finance Director, Mr. Cloutier? Ms. Adams?
Yes, thank you. I just would like, so you guys have internally all been going over this, for quite a while to come up with the budget. I feel like while the high level overview was really helpful, it was also like a speeding train of information, and for the public and likely some of my colleagues, there are some that just was like, by the time you're trying to wrap your head around one thing, you're speeding on to another thing. So I guess what I'd like to have Mr. Cloutier a little more slowly talk about the difficulty with the 2% proposed and why that's difficult going forward. To just clarify that again, if you could, you can put the slides back up if you want. I just feel like it was hard to absorb everything, and if I may be the only one, but perhaps I'm not.
No, I'm sure you weren't the only one. I was definitely talking way too fast and making the assumption that I was sitting in a room with a bunch of other municipal finance officers. So to take it back and to start from the beginning a little bit more slowly, there are actually two caps that we have to deal with when it comes to a municipal budget. The one side that we're all familiar with is the 2% levy cap, which affects what the tax rate is going to be. The other side is a appropriations cap. And typically every year we will pass an ordinance that says we are allowed to go above what COLA is in order to be able to expand our budget to meet our needs. And that usually goes up to 3.5%. So going back to the side that everyone focuses on, which is the 2% levy cap, State of New Jersey has created a budget formula that says these are all the things that you're allowed to put into your levy in order to make sure that you make ends meet and your budget's paid for. Salary and wages, other expenses, there's a whole bunch of stuff that typically all our operating expenses are lumped into this pile that says you can't go up by more than 2.5% or 2% rather. But the state also recognizes that there are certain things that they do not want to see us mess up on from a municipal perspective. And so one of the first things they say is debt service is excluded from that cap. So if we wound up taking on selling additional bond anticipation notes or financing a new bond where we knew that our debt service was going to go up by $2 million, but the cap was only going to let us go up by $500,000, we're allowed to increase the full $2 million in order to make sure that we pay our debts. And that's where a lot of people get confused by saying, but I thought there's a 2% cap. Why are my taxes going up 4%? And the reason is because one, debt service is one of the things that's excluded and can be stacked up on top of that 2%. And then pension payments are also in that exclusion list because obviously we don't want to default on our obligations to our employees and retired employees. Health benefits are also a mechanism that is outside of the cap, so it can go up well above 2%. Part of the issue for the last few years, and I just want to talk about this for a little bit on the health benefits side, is the state knew that they were in trouble with the way they were funding the health benefits going back probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And so they purposely kept rates flat or with very little percentage increase because they were trying to pressure municipalities to join the state health benefits plan. Remember, anything above the 2% cap was a formula that said, hey, the state plan's going up 4%. So your town's allowed to go up 4% also without getting penalized. It can be excluded from the levy cap. So the state was purposely holding themselves down underneath 2% while everyone else in the private sector was going up 6% or 7% as a way of trying to force towns to come into their plan. Over the course of 4 years, it didn't succeed. They didn't force towns to come in and join the plan. And what they were hoping for is towns that had healthier claims ratios coming in, which would then help them with their issue. So this is the year that we see a 24.5% increase because the state hasn't been going up over the last 4 years on the health benefits plan. Because of that, we are able to put that all of outside cap. But now, obviously, we're dealing with the situation where we're trying to stay at 2%, but we've got all these exclusion items that say we can go up well above 2%. And so for a jumping off point, Mr. Schuster said we're going to keep this as low an increase as possible. And for now, let's put the outside cap expenditures through surplus or fund balance so that we can present a budget that's at 2%. And that's what we're looking at here. Now, realistically, we should have a budget that's somewhere between 2% and 6.9%. I hope that made sense.
Well, it was definitely slower. I hope it made sense for the public, especially. But yes, thank you for that.
I apologize for talking fast as well. I know it's a long night and there's a lot to get done, so I
I'm
apologize.
sorry,
for that.
Mr. Schuster, but nobody is as fast as CFO Joe in talking.
We'll publish some of this information as well as we get through our workshops. Mr. DeLuca, I think, had his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Kaloje, I just want to be clear to the public. You talked about lost revenue of the Claris payment in lieu of taxes, and that it's not that they're not going to pay any taxes. They're moving from a pilot to paying 100% taxes, correct?
Yes, but to explain how that's a lost revenue for us is
Well, I understand it's a
when-
loss on the revenue, but it comes up on the tax payment.
No, they're going to pay. They're assessed at $8.7 million, and they're going to pay full tilt $8.7 million worth of taxes. So they're
Right.
not being excluded. But from a budgetary perspective, when it is a pilot agreement, the town keeps 95% of the pilot agreement and has to send 5% over to the county for their share. So last year, when the Claris was paying 80% of what they would have paid in taxes, the township was keeping the full $208,000 and then sending 5% of that off to the county. This year, now that they're paying the full amount of their taxes, we're still going to collect that $208,000, but our share, based on the municipal rate, is only going to be somewhere around $80,000. So when we were a pilot, we were seeing ourselves bringing in over $200,000. And now that they're paying their full amount of taxes, our municipal budget is going to see a $120,000 hit to revenue. That being said, the school's now going to get their full amount. The counties are going to now get their full amount. So there's smiles on the faces of some other governing bodies in terms of assistance for their revenue issues. But for us, it is going to mean that there is a net loss to what we were collecting from the prior year.
Right. Okay. I understand that. I just want to make sure that the public knows that this building is paying 100% of their taxes. To whoever gets it, they're paying 100% of their taxes, because the way it made it sound like they're not paying taxes anymore. They are paying taxes.
They are going to pay 100% of their taxes, and they're also going to come on board for paying the special improvement for the special improvement district.
Right.
So that's something they didn't have to pay through the pilot, but they will now be paying starting this year.
Do you know how much that will be?
Last year, we were somewhere at, I want to say about 12 cents, I think was the Maplewood Village Alliance, somewhere around there, 12 or 13 cents. So if I fire up a calculator real quick, 8700, and then divide that by 100, and then multiply that by 0.12. And they're going to kick in about $11,000 into the Maplewood Village Alliance.
Cool.
New money.
Yeah, and that also illustrates, we get a lot of opposition in the public about pilots, payments in lieu of taxes. But I think this illustrates some stuff about, where that money goes and why it's not necessarily an awful thing especially for the town, as is sometimes perceived. And I would wager to guess there's been 0 to very few school children in the Claris building as well. So I just want to make that comment.
Absolutely. I think that's really well said, Ms. Adams. And I do know there was a recent report done of who lives at the Claris, and the average age of folks who live there is around 65 to 70 years old. 85% of the residents. So these are people who have downsized and stayed here, aging in place. They're people who came from another municipality and interested in living in transit-oriented, no car, right by the downtown. So,
Which is typically the way it works.
Yep.
So a lot of times there's a fear-mongering kind of tactic, but the numbers prove out in redevelopment projects, especially in downtowns and transit-oriented, that they do not produce school children for the district. So.
Good. We covered a lot of good stuff already, but we have some departments to get through and some guests here. So if there are no more questions for our administrator or CFO at this moment. Okay, great. Gentlemen, don't go away because we're going to need you soon for each department, but we're going to turn it over to the Springfield Avenue Partnership.
Okay, hi, my name is Jim Neary. I'm the president of the Springfield Avenue Partnership. We're going to go over briefly some of the things we've done this year, our budget request, our new programs with the NPP, and Nicole will also go over that. She's our executive director, and you got to pardon her voice tonight because she's been just getting over COVID, so it's a little difficult for her to talk. And Sheila Cartledge will go over our budget and be able to address any questions that you might have for her. This is our first year as a Main Street, New Jersey community. We've sent our executive director to training in Virginia to know what it's all about and learn some of the intricacies of it. And we trained our entire board with National Main Street on best practices. So we hope to be able to use that to increase our effectiveness on Springfield Avenue. We also received a Main Street, New Jersey grant. Events new and old. Mayfest returned in 2022. The crowds were as big as ever. I think it was a great event. I think people were a little anxious for having something they can do outside, and it was really very successful. We've been raising money with some of our events. Our craft beer tasting returned $4,000, and this is going to be dedicated to public art for the future and other beautification efforts on Springfield Avenue. And we welcome some new events like Summer Jazz Service and the Maplewood South Orange Funk Fest. Design review, we've reviewed over a dozen applications, a wide range of projects, including signage, awnings, and new construction and building rehabilitations. The Neighborhood Preservation Program, which was managed by our executive director, Nicole, in conjunction with the township and the Springfield Avenue Partnership. We were able to raise over $600,000, of which $125,000 per year is what the grant will allow us to spend. We funded improvements to both Springfield Avenue as well as neighboring communities like the DeHart Center. So this is a win not just for Springfield Avenue, but for the entire town of Maplewood. That falls into the purview of the NPP. New business openings. We opened quite a few new businesses this year on Springfield Avenue. Spaces, which is a design firm, Loom Cellars, a wine store, Baxter's, pet store, Saber Contracho, a restaurant, Simply Caribbean, another restaurant. And I don't see it on here, but I believe we also opened Enrique's Final Touch as well. I think we will go to some of the things we're going to do next year. Do you want to go to the budget next? Or maybe Nicole, you want to maybe expand a little bit on NPP and what you've been doing there with the township. So let's go to Nicole next.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk about, so I manage the MPP grant. That was a grant to the township from the state. And then the SAP is a not-for-profit partner. And some of our things we did this year, well, right behind me, you can see the Yale Corner mural. This was not just a mural, but also a community event that lasted over a week. It's something I've never been part of before, and it was not just creating public art, but creating community bonding in a way that was really special. We made some investments to the Hart Center, including a state-of-the-art AV system, and to the Hilton Branch Library, including free public Wi-Fi and public seating outside. So now you can sit outside and work outside the library. We did a lot of investment in greening and tree care, including at Yale Corner and the library. We invested in new striping of our parking lots and new public parking signs that will be going up soon. We invested in some programmatic things that will help Springfield Avenue put on events like a generator and an amp. And we also put on our district-wide holiday celebration, which included events at the public library, the tree lighting, the menorah lighting, and the Yale Corner market. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. I see the budget's up here, so why don't we move to Sheila next?
Okay, well, Nicole, you may sound terrible, but you look wonderful. And I love the mural behind. As just to continue with some of the good things that Jim and Nicole have talked about, I do believe that we continue to have a very, very good year, actually a banner year, considering we're coming out of the pandemic. We still continue to do everything that we wanted to do, and then some. There were some things that we would continue to do, and some things that we were able to do that we weren't able to do before. So going into the first item, which is the assessment, I know this is what a lot of the town has been waiting for. We were finally able to do an increase of the assessment by 3%. And that's, of course, included in the budget for this year. Finally, we were able to have some wind there to do an increase. So we included that for this year. In terms of accounts payable, I was really, really happy to see that that number has significantly been reduced. We have been fighting a little bit, not really fighting, but it's been difficult to get the county to give us our invoices in a timely manner. But this year we made some headway, and we were able to reduce the accounts payable for that item there, and that's due to getting the invoices and making the payments. It looks like the accounts receivable the $75,000 amount, as you may not realize that amount is also includes some of the grant money that we are to receive for 2023, but we have not received it as yet. Going on to the events. The May Fest continues to be our signature event. We love doing that. That's the event where the community is involved. Everyone comes out and enjoys the afternoon. And we are going to continue to provide the May Fest as well as the other events that you have listed, you can see listed there. But the May Fest is definitely our signature. And what we also talked about a little bit this year is getting more sponsorship, more fundraising efforts. We've been talking about that for the last couple of years, but it seems that this year we're going to make some headway. We did set up a couple of new committees of which so that the board members could be involved as well. And so we've gotten some participation from the board members to work on the sponsorship as well as the fundraising committees. So that's going to help make the May Fest even better. And of course, the community event that we had for the Yale Corner, that was very well received. And at least the community, it was something that the community could do and be together on doing. Let's see, what else? The NPP grant, this was a little sticking point for us. We had a young lady working for us. She, as you can see, the admin income, the $25,000 amount. Well, as we came to the end of the year, things were not working well. So that person is no longer with us, in that we fired her, and we're in the process of hiring someone new to take that spot, but that has yet to be done. But we know that's part of the NPP administrative income. So we're of course looking to fill that position.
If I could interrupt you just for a second, Sheila, I'd like to thank Deb for stepping in and helping us out with a couple of events that were going to be handled by that person. So thank you, Deb.
Right.
Proceed, Sheila. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, so moving down a little bit, of course, the township service agreement is still there for $20,000. Another significant item is that our director, Nicole, she has done an unbelievable job, especially getting us and helping us with the grants, the NPP and the Main Street. And so we felt that it was only fitting that she get a raise. So we've included that into the process, and she's getting a 3.75% raise. So thank you, Nicole, for a job well done. I think we're almost to the end of as you can see, the district cleaning services, they're pretty much the same as we always have a large expense for landscaping, plants, maintenance, because we have the entire avenue. And so therefore that amount is always been up there, and we're continuing with that. Let's see. Reserve. I just want to point out the item that's in the reserve. Nicole felt that, we're always with the timing of our receiving our assessments, it would be good to have at least a little bit of a reserve. And this is money that we have in the bank. And we wanted to keep that a little bit higher than normal for those unexpected expenses that come up, and the money would be there and we wouldn't have to wait for the next assessment payment. And with that, I think unless anyone has any other specific questions about the budget for 2023.
So does anyone have any questions? comments? Okay, I'm just going to go over briefly what we're going to do, what we're going to try to do in 2023, since we were following some of the Main Street, New Jersey guidelines. We're going to increase our board involvement. Sheila mentioned that in some of the committees. We've developed some new committees, also Sheila mentioned, for fundraising and for business retention and marketing. We have strengthened those committees, and one for I'm going to call it community involvement, but this is to get the businesses involved, the residents involved, and the property owners involved more in the Springfield Avenue Partnerships programs. We're going to be developing a new strategic plan and creating a reserve fund, which you've heard Sheila talk about. Avenue reinvestment. We're going to invest in building stock via matching facade grant program. Invest in beautification with new banners, signage, and public art, which we've been doing, but now with the NPP, this allows us to do even more. Replace and update some of the gateway signs on Springfield Avenue, upgrade our streetscape in conjunction with the township's help, increase our pedestrian safety and mobility in the business district, and complete a study on branding and wayfinding. This is all in conjunction with the NPP program. Increase our events a little bit. We're going to hold our annual Mayfest as we always do, and then include at least 2 fundraisers during a year. We're going to increase our presence on Black History Month. Since the pandemic, we've slowed down on that a little bit, but we know we've got to boost our presence there, as well as Women's History and Pride. We're going to promote SAM more heavily in the surrounding communities, not just on Springfield Avenue. People know what's on Springfield Avenue and the surrounding communities. Continue our promotion cycle based on calendar. So we're going to formalize that a little bit more than we have in the past. And a lot of this, since the pandemic, we're trying to come back better, not come back the same. So we're looking at ways we can do things better, things that we learned in the pandemic that are just generally better ideas. The design guidelines is pretty high level at this point, so we're going to rewrite those so to make them more plain speaking. Support new and existing business with information and marketing and promotions. We found that some of the small businesses really have to focus on their business, and they're not focusing on communication. So that's something that we can help with. I think we have some good expertise that can turn people on to some good expertise here. Identify and support programs for minority-owned and women-owned businesses, and work more closely with the towns to develop shared database of available properties. So that concludes that and much more we're going to do in 2023. So anybody have any questions or comments on our budget, our plan, or what we've done in the past?
Yeah,
Nicole,
I just want to say that some years back, we talked about looking for annual increases in the assessment of the 2 SIDS. And I just want to thank the partnership for coming to us already with a 3% proposed increase in the assessment.
Agree.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. And I also like what you said, Jim, about coming back better, not the same. That should be the motto for everything. I love that. So thank you. Are there any questions for?
I think he stole that from Biden, right? Build back better.
Cuomo.
Yeah.
Cuomo.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, he made it his own and it works really well. So do we have any further questions for?
No, I would just like to thank everybody on Springfield Avenue. It's been 30 years since I started picking up litter and cleaning graffiti. And so it's sort of like a baby to me, the Springfield Avenue Partnership. That was a lot of work a long time ago, but I'm glad to see it still bearing fruit. So thank you for all your work on it.
We couldn't have done it without the participation of the township. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. You're welcome to stay with us, but we'll give you a few minutes to log out. Okay, and then we'll move over to the Maplewood Village Alliance in a couple minutes. Okay. It looks like our Springfield Avenue folks are going to stay along with us. All right. Do we have everyone from the Village Alliance? I think we do.
You have me, Amy Howlett, and Kat Dillette.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Please take over.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Bailey, for sharing our year in review. I'm just going to go through it quickly. I know that that you have a lot to cover tonight, but I just wanted to touch on, give you guys some idea of what we accomplished in the past year and what we're looking to do coming up next year. You can go to the next slide, Bailey. So we welcomed new businesses. We had 5 new businesses open this year, and then we had 3 other businesses that grew and expanded their businesses or changed their branding and grew and changed. You can go to the next slide. We continued to support our businesses the way that we have been, and even better. We gave out 8 facade grants. We promoted merchant events and their promotions through our email and our social media. We created a new business packet to make it easier for businesses coming into Maplewood Village to onboard and to understand where they can find resources. And we created marketing materials to help residents and also the property owners and the business owners understand where to park and what's going on in the village. We increased our reach and visibility this year. Most notably, our email newsletter grew by 20% and maintained a 50% open rate. And also our website visits grew by 234% over 2021. Next slide. We did a lot of work in beautification this year, building some momentum to head into next year. We did all our usual maintenance tasks of string lights and keeping the planters refreshed and fixing things and keeping things clean. We are very thankful to the Maplewood DPW. They work really closely with us on those things, and we appreciate that. And then we did 2 significant beautification projects, the entrance to Baker Street parking lot, which you can see on this slide, the before and after pictures, where we added more pavers and cleaned up the fence line and made it look much nicer and tidier and welcoming there. And then on the next slide, you can see we also did a lot of work on Highland Place parking lot entrance. We got rid of that muddy path and put in a beautiful paver path and some gorgeous plantings, water barrels, and a new bench, and cleaned up the whole bench area. And we're very grateful to our volunteers and our donors and the Township of Maplewood for all the support in that project. Next slide. We delivered 11 events this year, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm sure that all of you attended all of them and know how great they were. Our highlights were the Windows for Women project for Women's History Month last year, which we are going to do again this year. That event we did in conjunction with Springfield Avenue, and it attracted a lot of press. We had a lot of press with that on television and in the Star Ledger, and also it brought the Secretary of State into Maplewood to visit our stores. During Pride Month, we did Drag Queen Bingo, and we had over 150 people come out, and it was this amazing, diverse crowd of age and backgrounds, everything. It was kids, it was older people, everybody in between. It was a fabulous night. We're looking forward to doing that again. On the next slide, we did, of course, we had our Art Walk and Music Fest, and this was our biggest and best Art Walk and Music Fest so far. I mean, I've been involved with the Art Walk and Music Fest even before I was in Maplewood Village Alliance as an artist. And this year was just spectacular. It was huge crowds, thousands of people, at least 3,000 people coming through over the course of the day, with 11 musical acts and over 50 artists. It was a fabulous day. I can't wait to do it again this year. And then, of course, we had Dickens Village, which is a big community tradition that we do in conjunction with the township. And we appreciate all the support the township gives us in that event with the tree lighting and the menorah lighting. And we had a story time. And of course, we had a story read by the mayor and a little song sung, and it was great. On the next slide, back to the boring stuff. On the administrative side, we worked really hard to maintain our organizational stability while improving process and function. And that included, reactivating our board committees, bringing on new board members, and creating many new processes and procedures to streamline things and make things run more smoothly. We also began work on our 5-year plan and completed our financial audit. Next slide. So next year, going into next year, we really want to continue to build on this momentum that we have, and just have this. We have a goal of keeping that ball rolling and keeping Maplewood Village a vibrant, healthy, and interesting destination for everybody, for everyone, reaching not only within our community, but outside our community to bring people in to experience this wonderful village that we have. Beautification is one of our top priorities. We're working on the Baker Street Corner Benches project, which our chair, Aileen, the chair of the Beautification Committee, Aileen Binder, has been working with the township on already. We're going to continue with our, the Baker Street Corner Benches, sorry, it's that corner across from the ice cream shop, in case anybody doesn't know where I'm talking about. And it's a very underutilized space, and we feel like we can really activate that space and make it a community gathering spot. We're going to continue to pursue opportunities for public art, and we want to increase the amount of our facade grants because prices are going up. The price of materials is going up, and we want to continue to make it easy for business owners to keep their businesses looking good and do improvements. Next slide. This year coming up, we already have 11 events on the schedule. We're looking forward to continuing to do some of the same events that we've always done that people look forward to, and also add a few new events in there. Our marketing promotion, like I said, we want to reach outside our community through advertising in new markets and through new channels, maintain our active social media schedule, and keep everything looking fresh and new. Next slide. And of course, we always want to continue to work with the township on the projects that are ongoing there or that come up there, like the Village Center Parking Lot Project, 9 Highland Place, and anything else that comes forward with the theater or anything like that. And administratively, we're going to just continue to keep our organization stable while we continue to work to improve how we do things and create logical and equitable policies. And we're going to continue to work on our 5-year plan and continue our committee work. One of our priorities this year is to do more fundraising and to find a grant writer and to continue to build out that 5-year plan that we started this year. And that is that. Does anybody have any questions about that? Excellent.
That was well done. Thank you, Ms. Dillette.
Thanks, Dean. Thank you.
I know that that the Alliance president, Ms. Howlett, is with us. I don't know if she has anything she wanted to add about goals. Otherwise, we'll go right into the budget.
I think Kat has covered everything, and we can go into the budget. I just want to say that all the amazing things we've accomplished this year were thanks in large part to the leadership of Kat, and we're really lucky to have her. And you'll see that that's reflected in the budget that Kat's about to present.
So in our budget this year, we made some changes. We want to increase our budget in order to be able to do more and maintain, like I keep saying, maintain our momentum. And we want to build back better, because I heard that was what I should say. We want to build back better. No, we want to continue moving forward and be able to get more things done and build on the successes that we've had in the past year. There are 3 significant changes to our budget, and it's the executive compensation, our beautification budget, and the assessment. And I'd like to go through the expenses, go through all of the budget first, and then go to the assessment at the end, if that's okay with the township committee. Yeah.
Of course, please.
So you can see the executive compensation was increased. It was increased to be in line with what is appropriate to the scope of work and the time of this position. And everything else in that top part is pretty much the only changes there have to do with increases or decreases in expenses coming through administratively. In our beautification budget, our beautification, that first line item for landscaping, beautification and plantings is $30,000. And that is the mostly due to the ice cream bench, the Baker Street corner bench project. Aileen has done a lot of work in talking to the township and talking to contractors to come up with that number to complete the first phase of that project. And then we're also leaving a little money in there so we're able to continue our upkeep and some smaller projects. If you go across to the revenue side, you can see we're planning to do some fundraising for that project as well. Our SLA is pretty much the same. We have an increase based on, if you look at the actual amount, I feel like I'm pointing to my screen, but you can't see that. The actual amount that we spent on contractor plantings and landscaping this year, we just increased that amount to reflect what the actual cost is to us. We increased the amount of the facade grants, as I mentioned. We increased it by $2,000 so that we continue to help our businesses keep their businesses looking great. And everything else is pretty much the same there. On the next item on marketing, in order to increase our visibility and our reach outside of our communities, we are increasing our advertising budget. This will allow us to explore other channels and do some more advertising outside of our communities to let people know about our wonderful village. Down in the events and promotions section, the first section is all of our non-Dickens Village events. And that budget is pretty much the same. As you can see on the revenue side, our sponsorships cover that budget fairly well. And we did add an additional holiday open market that we expect to get some sponsorships for. Our promotions this year will stay the same. We have a drop in budget there because we made some changes in the promotions we're doing this year in order to be able to utilize that money in other places. In our Dickens Village budget, it's coming down a little bit from last year because we had a lot of house repairs last year. We won't have as many house repairs this year. And you can see on the revenue side, we had a bump in donations this year because we had one big donation to help cover a specific house repair, and we don't anticipate having that next year. And then that's about it for the rest of the budget. Bailey, if you want to scroll back to the top, we can talk about the assessment. So we did increase our assessment for this year. It hasn't been increased in a number of years, and I know that it's something that the Township Committee has wanted Maplewood Village Alliance to do. So in order to increase our budget, we increased the assessment, and then we're also taking some money from our cash reserves and doing some fundraising. That increase in the assessment works out to be, I think Joe Kay mentioned that right now it's 12 to 13 cents. The increase would be to about 15 cents. And that works out to be an increase of about $378 a quarter on $1 million property.
Kat, does that include the Claris building? Does this estimate coming online?
Yes, yes. And Jim Nathanson spent a long time talking with Joe Kay about all of this to make sure that we were kind of hitting what we needed to hit there.
I'm happy to see this, definitely. Well done. Are there any questions for Mr. Led on the budget?
I just have a comment. I agree, Mayor, that, I think we've been asking for an increase in the assessment for a while. I think the Claris coming online will really be a big help to your budget. But most importantly, I feel like, our comments the last couple of years about compensating a director for the Village Alliance is finally being recognized. I mean, and Kat, you and I have talked about this offline, the part-time director for a SID rarely works because the director ends up working for free for a lot of the time or not being compensated properly. So thank you to the Village Alliance for finally fixing that part of it. And I think a lot of the changes have been good and start running the organization and compensating staff or people doing the work appropriately. So congratulations, Kat, on that. And also just, thanks for all you do in the village. It's always great working with you and brainstorming stuff. So I'm so happy that, so I'm really pleased with the budget overall, and I don't have any questions. Sorry, Mayor, it's just a comment I couldn't just say.
Thank you, Nancy.
Beautiful. Thank you for saying that. Anyone else? Any questions or statements? Yeah, I
No,
just
in
want to
general,
add.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to
Go
say,
ahead.
and I know that Springfield Avenue didn't specially mark this out and everything, but I wanted to also thank you for the efforts that you put in to involve our youth. The internship for the summer program that's been going on, it was actually probably the most successful year that we've had. I believe the students were very impressed. The business owners were impressed with the students and just everything you put into it. So please don't forget to toot your horn for other things that you do around the area, because you absolutely knocked it out of the park this year. So thank you for that. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just going to close by saying that I want to also salute a couple of other folks who are here from the Alliance. Our new president, Amy Howlett, who really led us in some difficult conversations, right, about making necessary change. And also our treasurer, Mr. Nathanson, who's with us tonight, I see, who is one of the most detail-oriented individuals I've ever met in my life. But Jim really helped bring a lot of the, shall I say, legacy folks along in some of these changes. And I really want to salute him and all of his efforts and the number crunching and all of the emails and phone calls. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Jim. And obviously, well done. And thank you, Kat. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So you're free to go have a drink while we carry on. Okay, our next department is police and OEM. We will get started in 2 minutes. I respectfully ask for a 2-minute break. Just 2 minutes and we'll get started. Thank you.
Who's my mute?
Hey, Chief, I'll be right with you in 2 minutes. Okay, we've had 2 minutes. Okay, let's
All
get.
right, back.
Chief Sally, welcome. Welcome to your first budget workshop.
How you doing? Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. Good to have you. Are you joined by anyone else?
No, just me.
All right, wonderful. Okay, did you want to just generally talk about the department before you go into the budget?
Yeah, just just being the chief for this brief amount of time, I've been to a few public meetings where people's concern was safety. So this budget is kind of reaching our goal on making the community more safe. So a lot of the things in the budget is kind of out of my hands. It's salary and contracts. A lot of our equipment, it's it's a license that we have to pay every year or every month. So there's a lot of things like that. But with what's going on and with public safety and what happened with Tyree Nichols and everything else, training is very important. So we do have we're trying to budget for training, for more training for our officers. Also, we are having promotions. So the new supervisors are going to need training in supervising, and then we are looking to hire new officers. So when we hire new officers, we want to make sure we're hiring the right fit for our department and for our town. So that takes time and research and a little bit of money. So and also, I don't know if you're talking about capital budget tonight, but as far as like with the public safety, we are requesting public safety cameras at different intersections. We do have, and we need to update some of them. And again, a lot of this stuff is stuff that we just, we just contractually have to do. So that's my introduction. So let me just grab this quick. All right. Okay, so the first couple lines on the budget is contractual. So if you look at police department, the uniform salaries, that's the contract. That's negotiated through our PBA in the township. They go up each year from the contract, so that's what it is. Same with the crossing guards, the civilians. Weapons allowance is in the contract. That's how much we receive for each officer each year. Clothing allowance the same way. They get a certain amount per year for that. We get a certain amount for education, depending on what your education, what you graduated with, as far as if you have an associate's degree or up to a master's degree, it goes up for that amount. Also for military allowance, if you were in the military, you get a certain amount. So that's all in the contract. Police overtime, it's pretty much standard from last year. It didn't go up, and we've been doing pretty good with our overtime, as you guys well know, in the public safety meetings. Every public safety meeting, pretty much we're saying that we're going down in overtime. All right, so go to 240-201 office supplies. Okay.
So Chief,
Yes.
just to kind of guide you a little bit here. You don't have to go to every line item.
Okay.
Let's just focus, we've all seen the budget already. It was previously supplied to us, and
Right.
anyone who has specific questions about any line item will ask it. But let's look at the major significant changes in the
Okay.
budget. You mentioned one already.
Right,
That's
training.
yeah, cell 22, 301, 25, 240, 240-215, training expenses, right?
Right.
You're requesting 46,500. And you know, if you look historically, we've been at 12,000. And that was recent. Before that, before Chief Duvall, we were closer to like 5,000. So
Right.
can you give a little bit of context on
Yeah.
the 46,500?
So the 46,500 is including what we normally do with training, but on top of that, our community board of police requested a certain training. And that certain training is over $30,000. So that's per their request. The training is about learning about the teenage brain and officers responding to teenagers and the youth. So that's the training that they requested. So that's that large price there from that training.
Right. And if I recall correctly, Deputy Chief Malloy was looking into, she was pricing similar trainings from different agencies and outfits to get us to you know, a reasonable amount. So are you confident that the 30,000 or so is a good price? Have we had that research done, that homework done?
Well, we have researched other trainings that we believe is probably more cost effective that can do the same job. So we're still talking about that.
Okay, so right now, this 46,500 could possibly go down because we can do the same training, including the training requested by the Community Board on Police through other outfits. Is
That's
that
correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so this is preliminary, the 46.5.
Yes.
Okay, and I know we have a Community Board on Police meeting Wednesday night this week.
Good night.
So we be talking about it then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go down and look at some of the other significant changes. You know, the next one that I notice is cell 30, which is 2040-225, purchase of vehicles. We're going from about 25,000 to 120,000. You want to give us a little context there?
Yeah, it's just the prices of vehicles went up, you know, so it's not that we're getting, you know, we're buying a Lucid or something. It's just, you know, the same Fords that we were getting, the prices went up pretty significant. So they're about they're like 60,000 a piece, fully outfitted for a police vehicle.
Mayor, the administrator's recommendation is 0.
That's because of a move over to capital. In the past, my understanding was that there were about 4 vehicles purchased, 2 out of operating, 2 out of capital, and the 2 out of operating were from another municipality. That's not an option this year. So I believe there are 4 in the capital budget. And Joe can correct me if I'm wrong.
Mr. Schuster, we were told in the past that police vehicles do not have a life of 5 years, so they can't be capitalized. Is this something different?
Seems like our
No.
vehicles have lasted more than 5 years.
Yeah.
The vehicles, as long as they're SUVs and all-wheel drives, they're considered 5 years and
Right.
can be capitalized.
So is that what these are? Or are
Yes.
these sedans?
They're SUVs, 4-wheel drive.
Okay.
Right, so that's why it's 0 there then, right? Because it's gonna be capitalized. Okay, go ahead, Chief. Go to the next one where there's significant difference.
Okay, so those are the main ones. I believe, I'm trying to think, that it was that was the main thing. The training, the vehicles, and
Chief, can you go up to the crossing guards? That looked pretty significant also. We're going from 294 to 386.
Yeah.
Are we hiring more crossing guards, or is this just the increase in their hourly rate?
It's increasing the hourly rate, and we have more corners, so we're trying to hire more crossing guards as well.
Do you have a number, what we're going from to?
I do not have that number.
Okay, if you can get that, that would be just helpful.
Okay.
Okay. Chief, you were saying before the question from Mr. DeLuca that those were the main, we already covered the main
Right,
areas you wanted us to highlight, right?
right, right.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues? Ms. Adams?
Yeah, sorry, my computer just whacked out on me. Is the other, sorry, I'm trying to look at my spreadsheet as well as the one on the screen. Other contractual services, is that just routinely budgeted at 56,000, but it comes in considerably less than that? What is that for? And this
Yes.
says something about research on it.
Yeah, so those are like we have a lot of annual contracts
Okay,
come in. So like our cameras, and our vendors, it's maintenance and warranties and so that's what that is.
and the police dispatch, line 251-200 seems to be budgeted like the same, but we never really meet that. I'm wondering,
I'm trying to pull it up. You said 251.
it's 216,700, but we've been in the, about 40,000 less than that, and then 90,000 less than that. I mean, not 90, sorry, 20,000 less.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find a line you're looking at.
It's 251-200, the last 6 numbers.
Let's see what it is.
Right.
Under dispatch.
It's in bold.
Oh, okay.
So 251, 200 is a control. It's aggregating all the lines that are underneath it.
Okay,
So it's a total number. So if
Got
we
it,
were
sorry.
looking at the column for 2022, where we've only spent 163,000, we'd have to take a look at each individual line to see what was underspent. The first one I see here is 86,000 budgeted, 79,000 spent
right.
for the
Video.
phone system, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, I think it just would be nice to tighten where we can. No sense budgeting it if we're not using it. That's all I have.
Other questions for the chief?
Will the communications person that Mr. Schuster was talking about be also working with communications as far as the Nixle reports? I've been doing a little reading on them and realized that we're kind of using it as a one-stop shop for all dispatching of information, when in fact it really should only be used as a way of sharing information about safety, public safety. So will that person have access to this as well? I'm just confused exactly what exactly the communications person would be doing and how it would connect to the police department.
So the communications person would act across all departments and work hand in hand, both with the police department and every other department. Would they actually get involved with Nixles? That's a conversation I'd have to talk to with the chief. But I also think there are many other effective manners of getting our message out beside Nixle. We do want to, in my opinion, segregate the emergency communications from the non-emergency communications. And while Nixle is effective on getting everyone's attention, we don't want to use it for every little thing that's out there, because then you get the boy who cried wolf syndrome and people stop paying attention to what could be an emergency communication.
Right, and that's kind of the feedback I've been getting from the community.
Yeah, and it's just, oh, go ahead, Bailey.
I have a feeling we're probably going to say the same thing. Just to clarify, the reason we've been doing some of the notifications under Nixle just for the recycling for this month is because we weren't able to get our SMS rolled out quickly enough. So we'll be transitioning to that actually within the next 1 or 2 weeks. So all of those non-emergency communications will be shifted to a separate text sign up that people will either opt into, or they'll opt into Nixle, or both, and they'll come through separate channels.
But we will be using the Nixle to let people know there's a new SMS that's coming out. But with the recycling changes, we really wanted to make sure everybody was getting that. So it was uncharacteristic, but it was because we had no other choice for this month. But
Okay, thank you.
I guess I have a question. Going back to the crossing guards, Chief Sally, where you said we have more corners. Does that have to do with the school transportation changes, or why do we have increase of corners?
Well, like, so for example, the corner we have right in front of our headquarters used not to be a corner. So, like there's studies and everything else, and then we get information that, people are requesting a corner at a certain location, we have to fill it, so. Or is an officer that's out there.
But you're coordinating that with engineering, right? Because we get requests a lot for things like that, and it's got to be warranted, right?
Right, definitely.
Mr. DeLuca, I think you had your hand up, yes?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, any other questions for the chief? Chief, any final thoughts?
No, just happy to do the first budget. I'm a part of, so.
See, it wasn't so bad, right? Congratulations. All right, and we'll be looking at capital requests in a separate meeting. I hope we'll get to you the notes about some of the adjustments that need to be made to what we were just looking at after this meeting tonight. All right.
Gotcha.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now administration, township administrator.
Well, thank you. I'll turn it over to Bailey, and let me go ahead and share my screen here.
Thank you. And I'm just going to go on and start off by going over just really quickly some of the accomplishments that we had through administration last year, and then also some of our goals for this year to kind of set the context. I know that the township committees received that document already, but just so that the public is also aware. So some of our highlights that we included from last year under administration was coordinating the township website redesign, and that included implementing our digitized boards and committees software, and then also our agenda management system. And we're looking to be rolling out the minutes feature on that later this year, especially with our return to in-person meetings next month. And we'll also be utilizing some of the additional capabilities of the boards and committee software. One of the other achievements that I know has come up several times in public meetings is achieving Sustainable Jersey recertification at the silver level, which is the highest for a municipality. We also led a transition to modern digitized services through GovPilot. One of the items in this budget that's actually included through the community development department, just because of how it's historically been incorporated into our budget, is an increase in the cost of software for GovPilot, and that's going to be increasing from our current rate of $60,000 a year to $80,000, and that request is to allow us access to additional modules. So with the $60,000 subscription, we have access to 20 modules that are split amongst departments. However, we originally started with 10 last year and expanded it because it was within our budget, and it was something that departments had requested. Since then, I've received additional requests for more modules to be implemented across departments. So this request is going to allow us access to, instead of 20 modules, 125, but that can be touched on also a little bit more when that budget's presented. Some of the other accomplishments where we coordinated across departments and helped co-implement the Crisis Intervention Social Worker Co-Response Program, which I'm sure our health department will be talking about in greater detail, but definitely a highlight for the township as a whole and something I wanted to shed some light on. We've also worked at recruiting and hiring a new Two Towns for All Ages coordinator. So we'll be reviving that Two Towns programming this year, and along with the theme that several other organizations have mentioned, we're hoping to not just return to the programming with Two Towns as it was, but we're hoping to really build off of that and continue to expand our reach in the community, especially with vulnerable populations. We also had the return of some pre-COVID things internally, which includes our quarterly JIF staff meetings, which allows us to get better rates for the township's insurance. We've also focused on filling some key vacancies, and that included the promotions of some long-term staff who have worked their ways up within the township, which it's always great to reward people's hard work and keep them within the organization and their talents within the township if we're able to. And we've also successfully managed the expansion and continuation of the township's food waste compost pilot, among a couple of other things that I can just kind of gloss over really quickly. I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but I did include in my report that I received an award from the New Jersey Municipal Management Association last year. And I had not really planned on reading that out loud, but I started reading it, and so then I finished. So not trying to brag on myself too much during this presentation. Our goals for 2013 include managing the transition back to in-person public meetings, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, and as I'm sure folks will hear a lot about over the next month as we begin to roll that out. And that's something that we're going to be pushing out some heavy communications on following the wrap of the budget workshops this week. That'll be a big focus from our department. We're also wanting to improve township communications across departments. This includes the SMS messaging that was mentioned earlier. We also want to continue to build on the communications campaign for dual stream recycling. We're going to be doing a mailer about the leaf blower ban soon, and we're going to include some additional communications on the recycling there based off of resident requests. And then also what we're hearing from DPW are some of the points of confusion for folks participating in that recycling. We're also looking to revive our township social media accounts. We have gotten back into the Facebook, and we're looking at getting our Instagram account back up and going as well. And then we're also looking into ways we can streamline the newsletter and increase engagement and open rates, and also find ways to create our different newsletters, create a more streamlined approach and look to each of them, but also make it so that people are able to opt into the content that's relevant to them. We're not bombarding them with information that they don't necessarily want. And then all of this, of course, goes into the goal that Interim Administrator Schuster mentioned of us hopefully hiring a full-time public information officer to manage communication across departments. As of right now, that's managed through administration as a portion of our work, but having one person who that's their dedicated full-time job, we think will really improve our delivery and also our responsiveness and our transparency. And that's something we definitely would like to improve as a township. So we're also looking to build off of that digitization of township services. As I mentioned earlier, we're hoping to achieve an all-star municipal equity index rating from the Human Rights Campaign, which is something that will also be a big focus following these budget workshops. We're going to kick it into high gear with that. We're hoping to coordinate some additional programming and communications to increase public knowledge on affordable housing programming and affordable housing measures within the township, as we know that that's a big concern that folks have raised over time, and especially with our health officer doing recent surveys for our Sustainable Jersey Health Gold, which she'll be submitting for later this year. That's something that we've heard folks are interested in learning more about, so we want to focus on that. And then, of course, again, as Interim Administrator Schuster said, would like to oversee the execution of a pay equity study for all non-union, non-seasonal staff, and then implement salary changes as a result of that as a form of a remediation plan. And then we, of course, want to help all of our department heads who are seeking any new hires or filling any vacancies to achieve full staffing, and then continue the rollout of new and previous SOMA 2 Towns initiatives, as I mentioned earlier, really building off of what we have. And another line item that goes along with our goals that actually falls under a different department's budget is that SOMA 2 Towns line item. It's managed through administration, but it's listed under community services. In years past, we've always requested 15,000. This year, I'm requesting 20. As we build back, we want to do some big communications pushes for that program and make sure that we're reaching more people than previously. We also, since we were not as active in it last year, aren't really sure what the cost of operating it would be with the new inflation rates. And so I'm hoping that having some of that cushion in there will allow us to have really high quality programming and additional programming that we didn't have previously, while also making sure that we'll be able to stay within that budget. And this is in line with the number that the South Orange SOMA 2 Towns group is requesting as well for their department or for their side of the operation. The key difference is, if anybody looks at their budget versus ours, is that we purchase our equipment through the IT line items in administration, and South Orange purchases IT equipment through their individual line items. So there might be some discrepancies there looking at it, but after communications with our counterparts in South Orange, it seems like they're going to about even out around 20,000 for operating. And then we are, of course, hoping to renegotiate successfully all of our union contracts, which are up for renewal next year. And then we are hoping to develop a 5-year IT lifecycle purchasing plan. I know last year we had a big capital line item for IT that was around $100,000. And I'm hoping that by planning these purchases further into the future, we can avoid a big ticket line item like that and really just incorporate a more consistent, smaller IT capital plan so that we're not having to get those extremely large sums of money to purchase all at once. And we're not having everything go out all at once, because with supply chain issues the way that they've been, that kind of puts us in a risky position in terms of wondering when things are going to be delivered and back ordered and such. And two other things that we're really hoping to do are to, once we have our full-time BIA brought on, we'd like to collaborate with the finance department to implement a standardized purchasing process that's centralized within the office of our township qualified purchasing agent, who is also our assistant CFO, so that everyone's following the same guidelines, aware of the same guidelines and procedures, and it all funnels through one office so that there's a proper set of checks and balances in place. As of right now, we do a relatively good job with this, but we can always improve, and having that centralized QPA position looking at all of our big purchases will really assist with that. And then last but not least, we have been working across departments, primarily with finance and community services, to improve our onboarding process for seasonal staff. And that's something that's already underway, but something that we're really looking forward to in terms of making that rollout into the summer season more manageable. It seems really early, but actually it's already started on our end in terms of hiring for summer. So we've already gotten a jump start on that. So that's just kind of the overview and the context. In terms of the actual budget, if you look right here, there's a big increase under administrative and executive salaries and wages, and that is primarily because of the salary adjustment. That line item in the past has been budgeted at $20,000, but it hasn't been utilized, at least not within my time here. I know that there was some of it that was spent in 2021, but I personally am not familiar with what that was spent on. So I believe it was along the same lines of adjusting it, but not in terms of adjusting salaries to meet a pay equity studies recommendations, which is what we're of course recommending now with the 400,000. There's also that slight increase in administration salaries. There's not any individual increases included in this. This is just the cost of salaries and benefits with those cost increases that CFO Kaloje mentioned earlier for this year. So that's where that increase is coming from. And I know it's around $60,000. So under our operating expenses, it's a large percentage increase. It's not a large money increase from 660 to 1,200 under miscellaneous. And that just has to do kind of with inflation and the cost of various items. Parking meter maintenance had been bumped up to 14,000, but then that actually was moved over to capital. That's a request for new parking meters and new parking meter management, which I'll talk about more extensively when we get to that meeting. So that's holding steady at 5,000. We're recommending that we increase professional services from 31,000 to 70,000. So last year we spent 59,000 on professional services. The reason we're requesting, last year we spent 59,000. The reason we're requesting 70 is because 50,000 of that, which that is a buffer number, from the folks that we've spoken to, it will be a lower cost than that, but 50,000 was to be allocated towards conducting the salary study, because the 400,000 mentioned earlier is only to adjust people's salaries accordingly and not for the actual work involved in the study itself. And it does look like that will come in around 35 to 45,000, depending on which vendor we go with and what the final specs, for lack of a better word, of that project would be. Other than that, there is a slight increase of 6,000 in dues, meetings, and seminars. That is just, again, increases in cost of travel and lodging because a lot of this has to do with conferences, and then also just general meeting supplies. We did lower the amount budgeted for boards and committees from 10,000 to 5,000 because we historically have been spending only a couple thousand, if any, money out of that. So there's no need for it to remain at that high of a level. Other than that, we don't have too many changes through several of these line items, except for the last one under operating expenses is special events. We put in $45,000, recognizing that after a several year hiatus, the 4th of July programming would be coming back this year. And I believe in the past, it may have been allocated through a different budget line item, but this is where we've incorporated it for the 2022 budget. So that's where that number is coming from. I know it's not there historically. In terms of human resources operating expenses, we have an increase in labor attorney. That's just based off of the knowledge of the litigation that we have in process that we're aware of, and that reflects that. Other than that, there aren't too many increases there either. Employee recognition, we did increase based off of what was spent last year and what we expect the cost to be this year based off of inflation. So that went from 3,000 to 10,000. Last year we spent close to 6,000. So we think that that'll be reflected accurately. And then going down to IT, we actually decreased a little bit on supplies, did a slight increase on monthly internet fees of, well, a little bit more than a slight, I should say. We did an increase of $11,000 in response to what the cost of monthly internet fees were for 2022. We also increased some of the funds for server maintenance based off of 2022 spending. And we increased our software budget from 98,000, which was right around what we spent and what we allocated last year, to 193,000 to add in the funds if we were interested in purchasing additional hardware or software for hybrid meeting technology. We wanted to make sure that that was something that was accounted for in the budget. We also increased our website development hostmain in accordance with the charges that we will be seeing over the next year. Some of the costs were covered by capital previously because they were rolled into the implementation of different technological upgrades, including the website upgrade. So that's why they're showing up here. They're not any new charges. They just haven't been billed to this line item previously because they were included in larger purchases. And then network administrator, we're still waiting for quotes back from some of our vendors in terms of network maintenance. We know that it's going to go up from 76,000. Our 1,500 from last year is a little bit funky because some of those costs were rolled in elsewhere. Some of the bills, I think we haven't even received yet or might not have paid out yet. So we're expecting that to go up. We don't know how high, but we thought 100,000 would be safe to budget for. And then as those quotes come in before the budget is officially introduced, we can adjust that accordingly. Legal services remained relatively steady. The biggest increase would have been, we did a little cushion of 15,000 for miscellaneous legal expenses and zoning litigation that wasn't there previously. And we also increased the funding for, oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading from the long line. We left the funding for defensive tax appeals the same despite an initial request to increase. And then under Committee for Entrepreneurship and Economic Development, we lowered the requested amount from 159,000 to 25,000. We weren't sure why it had come in at 159,000 last year, but I guess with the master plan expenses, sorry, that's why it was. But we weren't sure why it hadn't quite spent that amount. We put it back to 25,000 for this year based off of previous spending, and that's where we've kept it. But if there's something that I'm missing there in terms of payment for the master plan, please let me know and we can adjust that one accordingly. And then last but not least, we have historic preservation, which has historically had 3,000 budgeted. There's not much spent. We just kept it flat.
Okay, that's a lot. You did that really well. I don't think you took a lot of breaths there, Ms. Burnett. And you should be bragging on yourself about yourself because you've done some amazing things. So kudos to you. Hats off, truly. Thank you for everything you've been doing. There's a lot going on and a lot to be done. And thank you for walking us through some of these slight changes in the budget here. I think Mr. DeLuca has his hand up first for questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple on line 18, 100, 100, 226, Farmers Market. Do you know why we spent $4,000 last year?
So this is an interesting line item because it's similar to some of the ones I pulled out earlier. This is actually still under an administration account, but it's managed by DPW. My guess would be based off of, one, the amount that was budgeted. It probably wasn't something that was consciously being kept under a certain amount. Two, I do know that we paid for some advertising, and I know that the advertising was more costly than I would have anticipated, and I don't think it would have fallen within what was previously spent. That said, I don't think it accounts for the difference, so that would be something that I would recommend bringing up during the DPW presentation, but that's kind of a weird line item. It's managed through them, but it's under our budget.
Well, that's because it used to be managed through the administration. So once we moved it to DPW, we should either decide to give it to DPW or what, but it doesn't make sense to have it here and then have them manage it.
I'm sorry if I may interrupt, Committeeman. The previous assistant administrator saw the opportunity to delegate what was typically the responsibility in administration to the DPW when there was a new hire. And that's how it got transitioned over to being done by the DPW. But historically, prior to that, it was always done through the administration's budget.
Right, I understand that. So it really should just be a decision one way or the other, because the most important thing here is that we are likely going to move the farmers market this year. So reducing the advertising does not make sense to me. We're probably going to have to do more advertising. So I just want to flag that. On line item number 50. 155, 155, 210. You zeroed out the affordable housing attorney. Is that going to be covered under miscellaneous legal expenses? Because you never know. I know we haven't had any because we settled the case, but we do have an affordable housing project that's coming up this year. And so I don't want to leave us in a position where we have no money. If we can tap the miscellaneous legal expenses, that's fine. But if not, we should put a few $1,000s back in that line.
Yeah,
we'd be able to tap the miscellaneous in the legal.
Okay, and then just going back to what Ms. Barnett mentioned on 58, line 58, 170, 170, 205, the master plan expenses. I mean, we hired a consultant. That consultant's doing work. We had to pay them more than $16,000, no?
Yeah, that's being taken care of right now. We had a stack of some bills that we just realized were not paid, and then Joe is processing those. Correct, Joe?
And that is correct. And I can give a little better explanation on what's going on with this particular line item. Last year, the TC adopted a resolution appointing someone to be or consultant for the master plan. And at the same time, also adopted a resolution that created an emergency appropriation. The reason we did that is because the master plan emergency appropriation gives us the ability to stretch out paying for it over 3 years. So what's going on in this particular line item is once the emergency appropriation was created, the $140,000 was placed into the 2022 budget, and all charges that we have going on, both in 2022 and 2023, will get charged to this particular line item.
Okay.
On the other side of the expenses down towards the bottom statutory, you're going to see that we picked up a new line item for a deferred charge of roughly $47,000. We'll have that for this year, next year, and 2025 to pay that off. I know there's been some talk about expanding the scope of what they're going to do for us. If we do so, we would need to do the same emergency resolution. We would put that funding into the 2023 budget, and then we would be able to pay that portion off over the next 3 years as well. Or if you prefer, because it's not a large enough number, we can just budget a full 15,000 to get us through the the additional scope of work.
So the 140 here is not going to be swept. It's going to be kept, and we'll be able to, any expenses this year will be able to be credited against that or charged against.
Correct.
That.
To date, we've probably charged about $60,000 to date, maybe a little over $60,000 to date with these last set of invoices that finally made it over to get processed. And we obviously anticipate on spending another $80,000 because that's what the resolution contracted them for. We would continue to charge this line item from last year to pay the contract.
Okay. And just to go back to up on the top there, the reason we never had fireworks money is because we never allocated fireworks money. That was covered by the Municipal Alliance. So we never did it. And then in 2020, we allocated $45,000 for fireworks, but then we canceled it because of the pandemic. So that's it could either go here or it could go in the Department of Community Services, but we just continue to need a line because that arrangement with the Maplewood Civic Association is over. And so anything that we're going to do for the 4th of July will be municipally paid for. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Ms. Adams, I'm going to let you go next. I just wanted to follow up on the master plan line item. So I think we should, just to be safe, if approved, if additional engagement is approved, which I think it will be because we're seeing that we're going to need a few more sessions that were not within the original scope of services, and therefore the resolution, it's going to be closer to $20,000. Mr. Kolodziej, I think you mentioned 15, so I just wanted, just giving you a heads up again, if approved, we'll have that conversation during TC meeting forthcoming. Thank you.
15 is a pretty good guess on my part then, Mayor.
It was well done. Okay, so Ms. Adams.
Yes, just to follow up on the fireworks, I feel like that's a conversation we should have as a governing body of, if and how. Plus, it doesn't mention Juneteenth, so I don't know. It might be something we want to just kind of have a conversation about because we have not had one, and that's a big nut to just kind of take over without discussion. Because a lot of towns are canceling theirs because of expense, because of, issues with that. Also, how did we come up with the number of, without the salary study yet done, a $400,000 chunk of money for compensation? Because this budget and administration is really big and scary.
Yeah, one of the first things to keep in mind is, although there's a big number there, $400,000, there are no other non-union salary increases, whether it be merit or cost of living adjustments throughout the entire budget. So what I did is I looked at the past year's budget and summed up what those increases would be and made some educated guesses on what an appropriate number was to keep in that range. So that's basically how it is. 400,000 the right number? It might be closer to 300,000. Depends on what the salary study came in, but I just want to emphasize that is a compilation of what would be all increases for non-union employees.
So salary study, do we have a timeline on when that would be? We also haven't fully decided whether to do that, have we?
No, we did not want to go down this path or engage anyone until the TC was okay with the concept and wanted to move forward. So we have not engaged anyone yet. Bailey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the time frame that was issued with the people that we're talking with is about 3 months. Is that correct?
3 to 6, depending on the specific deliverables and also depending on the firm carrying out the work. So twofold, but somewhere within 3 to 6 months, yes.
So, and I guess the other question would be whether we're going to take that, if say we're shy $400,000 across the board in what we pay our non-union employees, right? Just because that's the number you put in there. I feel like there should be a discussion whether or not we want to take that all in one lump, or we want to gradually, over the course of a few years, bring people up to where they're supposed to be, if they're in fact underpaid. I mean, we're kind of making the assumption that they are, but there's a lot of things going on with regard to COVID, and people changing careers. I don't think everything is because, we underpay our employees. So when do we have those discussions and of how we want to address this? Because it's a lot of money, and it feels like it should be something that's phased in as opposed to taking the hit all at once.
That's certainly, yeah, I mean, that's certainly an option, and we'd love to have those discussions on what you think is more appropriate, whether to do it immediately or have it phased in. It's kind of, I understand it's hard to have that discussion without having the study in front of you and know whether it's a 200,000 or a 400,000 or even worse hit. But yeah, ready to have those discussions when the TC is. But I think the first thing that would kick this off is starting off with the salary study. So I'm prepared to have that discussion whenever the TC is. And if you're comfortable engaging someone, we can move forward on that.
Okay, so we'll put this on for the agenda, the forthcoming TC agenda. Ms. Fritzen, if you're still there, could you add it? And we'll have Mr. Schuster explain, and then we'll have a discussion. Okay?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. And regarding July 4th and Juneteenth, as it relates to Juneteenth, just a reminder that we've established an alternate practice between the two towns with respect to that celebration. So this year is South Orange is hosting at Floods Hill. We hosted last year, they're hosting this year. And so we would go in halfies on cost. I don't know what the cost is going to be, but we can look at our previous past 3 years. We've had a Juneteenth celebration to see what we need to allocate for that.
That would be good, but also South Orange is one of those municipalities that canceled their 4th of July several years ago. So maybe a conversation can be had with them with regard, if we're going to share Juneteenth expenses, maybe we get some contribution from them, because I'm sure a good chunk of the residents of South Orange come to Maplewood for 4th of July. So
yeah, sure. So I'll put that on the agenda as well for 2/7, our next TC meeting. Ms. Fritzen, once again, can you add that as well, July 4th?
Yes, Mayor.
Discussion agenda. All right, cool. Other questions for administration? Let me see if I can see anybody here because we're sharing. Deputy Mayor Engel, Committee Member Cripe, no? Okay, I didn't want to exclude anybody. Any final thoughts from administration before we move to health? All right. Thank you all. Did someone say something? No. Okay. I think health is ready. Let's get right into it. Health Officer Davenport, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Mr. Schuster, if you could put up our budget, please. Oh, thank you, Ms. Barnett. Okay, so this is the health budget. It's fairly simple and fairly flat. The increase from last year to this year is because we added the crisis intervention social worker salary. So we are looking at a full-time CISW as well as a part-time for this year to assist with additional resources, which we are looking at needing All of our O&E is pretty flat from last year. Going down to animal control services. So we are now in an interim interlocal agreement with the Township of Bloomfield for ACO services at, I believe, $6,000 a month. So even if we kept going with them for the next 6 months and past that, over 12 months, if you could scroll up further, that would equal to about $72,000. So whether we stay with Bloomfield for the remainder of the year, or we look into a prorated RFP with another entity, that amount seems to be on par with what we've paid in the past, which was, roughly within the low 70s with St. Hubert. And then we have some O&E expenses, but that again is pretty small for essential items. Scrolling down, half of our staff budget is paid through the Strengthening Local Public Health Capacity Grant, which we have through June of 2023, with additional funding from two grant funding sources from July 23 to June 24, which we are in the process of applying for now. So that money is coming and will sustain the rest of our staff for the next year and a half. But as we look at just 2023, the money that we have right now is just until June, because that's what we have guaranteed. And then finally, we have the Apothecarium private grant. That is the community benefit funding that is allocated for $45,000 annually for Municipal Alliance services, and also to address issues that are also surrounding Municipal Alliance and substance use, such as mental health and education. So that is pretty much it for my budget.
Okay, can we put it back up there in case there are any questions? Could we go to the top? My question was about the additional social crisis intervention social worker.
Yes.
So are we adding it here and then knowing that we can pay for it through a different stream?
Yeah, I believe that both the full-time and the part-time are included in this line item, so that you're aware of how much the salaries are in total.
Regardless of the funding source, we still have an expenditure there, so that has to go through the budget.
Right, but this number includes both is really my question. I didn't ask it well, but that's my question.
Correct.
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 Okay. All right. And could we go further down to look at the where is the part about our continuing to support South Orange while they find their own health officer? What if it goes into next year by the time they're able to hire? Have we accounted for all of that? Where's that?
Well, that would be on the revenue side.
Oh, that would be on the revenue side, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have the Apothecarium grant, the 45,000 for, right, terrific. I don't have any questions. Anyone have questions?
I have a question on the nursing services, number 5.
Mm-hmm.
Last year we budgeted 10.5. This year we're budgeting 62.3.
But I believe requested is 12,700.
No, I understand, but the administrator recommendation is 62.3.
So I can explain that since salary and wages are predominantly a finance department calculation. Most of the salary from the year before, 85% of it was being charged off to the Strengthening Local Health Capacity Grant, and that is expiring at the end of June. So we are budgeting appropriately so that we're not laying off a nurse for the second half of 2023.
Okay, so that we need to have that conversation because we took on grant money, and now the question that we have to answer is, are we going to, after when that grant money expires, are we going to use taxpayers' money to keep that program going, correct?
Not entirely, because we had a nurse, we had a full-time nurse prior to getting the grant. When the grant came in, we saw an opportunity to shift how we paid for it from the taxpayers to the grant. So this is just we transitioned off it when the money came in. And now we're looking to transition off it as the money expires.
Yeah, because I think we need to have a whole conversation because there's a lot of people there that are grant funded. And we talked about this a little bit in Health and Community Service Subcommittee, is that we need to have a plan as to what services we want to deliver and how we're going to pay for this. Because I'm not sure anybody signed on to the grants knowing that we were going to have a local obligation when the grants ran out.
So this particular grant that was instituted by the state a couple of years ago, and this is typically how the state will try and transition. They'll throw all the money at towns in order to get the towns to do what they see as a need at the municipal level. And then they slowly start to close the grant off year after year, assuming that the towns are now picking that up year after year so that it's a smooth transition and not a spike in the salary and wages for the additional programs that the state thought was important enough to strengthen the local health capacity. So I agree with you. It's a policy decision, and the TC is going to need to decide what they're going to do. But our budgets over the course of the last few years have been following what the state is trying to achieve, which was in the very first year, we'll pay for everything, strengthen your response, but now we want you to wean off and start to pick that up. Policy decision will need to be made if we want to continue that course.
But was there anything in the grant agreement that required us to do that? I know when we used to get the SAFER grants for firefighters and cops, you had to commit to so many years after. Was there anything in these grants?
No.
Okay.
I do want to just clarify that, as I mentioned, we are applying for 2 grants that will take us through July 2023 into June 2024 to offset, the ending of this current grant and sustain our staff. So that question about whether the municipality has to pay for it can be offset until 2024 budget, because we are applying for 2 grants that will be, one is like 139,000, and then hopefully the strengthening grant will be around the same amount of 274,000.
And if I could just ask just a follow-up question on the crisis intervention social worker. So this is for 2 as opposed to 1. And so one of them we're able to use the funds from the apothecarium, and the other is coming out of town funds?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for health? Okay. Thank you, Health Officer Davenport.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening, everyone.
You too. All right, Ms. Fritzen, you're up next.
Hello, Mayor and Township Committee. Can you put my budget up and Township Committee budget up?
We should be done already, Liz, because usually it's just clerk's office, all good.
Clerk's office and Township Committee. I guess you've approved everything and have no questions. One thing I am going to say, we've incorporated, expecting to be bringing back some programming that we haven't had due to the pandemic. And a lot of the programming, of course, is coordinated and run by the Township Clerk's office. So you'll see that we've incorporated back things like Memorial Day, Veterans Day, the various pop-up events that go on at Town Hall, reorganization meeting. I expect that the next reorganization meeting might be more, like we've had in the past. Some kind of volunteer recognition program, which we haven't had now, in 3 years. We talked about sharing with Juneteenth. We've had similar things. Well, when I say pop-up events, Haitian American Day, other programs that come up throughout the year that the Township Clerk's office pretty much sets up and manages. So I bring that to your attention. The other thing that I've requested is the purchase of 100 chairs for the town hall, and also a sound system dedicated to the town hall, just based on the fact that, you know, we have a lot of events. Every time we have an event, we need to borrow those items from the Woodland. They're not always available. And I think the wear and tear of moving those things around all the time over to town hall, we really have shown that we have a need for those items. So that's something, you know, that's new. Any questions? I feel depressed. You never have a question.
You want us to play hardball with you, huh?
Not really.
How many chairs are we talking about?
We're talking about 100 chairs.
100 chairs. How often do we need 100 chairs at town hall? You wanted questions.
Okay, well, you, for example, anytime we have anything out on the plaza, and
Yeah.
you know, we've had quite a few things this past year alone out on the plaza, and we can certainly use 100 chairs at, you know, many times.
Yeah, I'm okay with the.
And the other thing. I mean,
Fine.
okay,
chairs are
but I
fine.
need to say that based on the rental of 100 chairs that we had for a memorial service most recently, we paid a lot of money to rent 100 chairs. I don't even want to tell you.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense not to have our own, for sure.
So,
Other, go on.
if you're through with the budget, looking at the line items, if you have any other questions, I did want to go over a couple of the goals and our accomplishments for the department.
Any questions on the budget? All right, seeing none, go ahead, Liz. Ms.
Okay.
Fritzen.
So, you know, I'm proud to say that we've had some achievements in 2022, and really especially working with administration and you know, being receptive to things like going with an agenda programming system, which we did in all of 2022. And again, we had gone to GovPilot, and some of the modules that, you know, we already have available, and we've been very receptive to those for events, for our open public record requests. I mean, we get over 1,000 open public record requests annually. So that's been helpful. We're working on, I would love to see the boards and committees finally set with the program. We're pretty close. We've been working with the Granicus program on that. But I want to say that the township clerks and staff have been working hard to get things made easier for the public with online processing. As far as 2023, some of the goals, to continue educational training for the department. We have a great staff right now, and to continue to educate is my motto for the staff. And we have a staff member that will become a certified municipal registrar very shortly this year. And again, the deputy is a registered municipal clerk, as am I, and a certified municipal clerk and a registrar as well. So training to me is extremely important, and sending, you know, the staff to learn and keep up their certifications and also achieve some new ones.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Any questions from Ms. Fritzen about goals for 2023? All right, thank you for your fulsome report.
Thank you.
And if you have nothing further, we're going to take 5 minutes and then jump into Public Works and Engineering, okay? 8:25, we have caught up. How cool is that? 8:25, see you at 8:25. It's 8:25. We're going to resume. I see we have Mr. Kittner with us.
Hello,
Mr.
Mayor,
Kittner,
committee.
good evening. Thank you for being with us and thank you for your patience.
Mayor, it's my pleasure. Pleasure to be here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kittner. All right. Well, you will decide whether we stay on time tonight, Mr. Kittner.
I'm the closer tonight. No,
You're the closer. You're the closer.
No pressure.
no pressure.
All right, so Mr. Kittner, we're going to turn it over to you. Welcome again. However you want to start, if you want to dive into your budget first and then talk about some narratives or no narratives, however you want to do it, the Zoom is yours.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you, Mayor, and the committee for the opportunity to present the budget. I appreciate everyone's time. You know, I'm fortunate because I work with such a diverse, great group of men and women who are committed to their jobs and serving the township. So what I'd like to do, Mayor, if I could, is just maybe talk about some of our accomplishments and then go into some of our goals quickly. I know it's late, and then we could go through the numbers.
Certainly. Go ahead.
So I know on the agenda, we had listed DPW first, which is fine. I'll just start with DPW. In terms of our accomplishments, again, we're very proud of what we accomplished. We planted over 200 trees by hand. We continued with the jitney service and managed that. The farmers market was the largest ever. 2021 was a record, but we actually beat it in 2022. I think there was an issue of cost. We could get into this more if you'd like, but that was primarily due to the porta-john that was rented for that, the Farmers Council costs, as well as advertising costs. We advertised in a number of different periodicals, one of which was Edible New Jersey and other local media. We didn't pay a graphics designer for that either. We actually did that in-house. So if you want to talk more about it, we can. But moving on, we purchased new vehicles and equipment. You know, it's essential to equip our workers with the proper equipment so that they could do the job. And this committee, through the past 3 years, has done an outstanding job with giving us the tools that we need to do our job. So I want to thank you for that. We did complete the fuel management tanks. There were two 10,000-gallon tanks for gas and diesel here at DPW. That powers all of our vehicles, including fire, police, the Board of Ed, all of our vehicles. And it actually during this year was used in the pinch by the South Orange Police as well. We performed extensive road repairs. Over 2,000 potholes were filled, over 2,000 miles of roadway were swept, and we laid down more than 860 tons of asphalt. That included overlays, and we managed to pick up over 13,000 cubic yards of leaves throughout the township. We also participated in the spring rakeout program. We introduced dual stream recycling. We continued with shredded day, bulk drop-off day. We performed extensive maintenance in the trees in our parks. This year was tremendously difficult for them because I think of climate change, and that was a challenge. A lot of our mature trees died. We do have a program for that to try to reintroduce that. And buildings and grounds, there was a lot of building maintenance that was performed, including our various basketball and tennis courts, also Dehart Park. Siphons were jetted, our utilities and stormwater were maintained, miles of lines were jetted. And we added additional new employees to the departments to complement our existing workforce, and that really made a difference in terms of responding and being able to, do all this work. In terms of goals, we want to improve dual stream recycling for the residents, make it more user friendly. We want to look at options of trying to electrify our fleet, at least our tools, and improve infrastructure for future planning. A lot of our athletic fields are going to continue to get increased attention. We want to do a better job with that. I thought last year was good, but we could certainly do better, and that's going to be one of our goals. We're going to increase road repairs and pothole filling. We're also going to work closer with the engineering department. It's worked out very well, both departments. We reduce waste and redundancy, and that really was a big effort that, in 2022. We want to plant more trees that are disease resistant so that we're not constantly losing our total tree population. And we want to improve certain building systems like the fire suppression system on Bergdorf, for example. We want to improve sanitary and stormwater resiliency. We're working with engineering on that. And we're going to continue to stripe crosswalks, center line striping, and stop bars for pedestrian and traffic safety. We are switching to electric equipment. We have electric blowers and string trimmers. We're going to try to get to hedge clippers and other equipment as well to make it more green. And lastly, there's a number of rain gardens that engineering introduced, which we're going to maintain. That's 44th Street. That's actually under construction. It'll be complete by probably May of this year. Burnett Street has already been done. We're going to have an aggressive maintenance program for that, and Hilton Library as well. So that is what I have for goals and accomplishments. If you have any questions on that, we could go through that or go directly to the costs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kittner, for the narrative. Are there any questions from my colleagues about Mr. Kittner's narrative? Any remarks? Okay. Let's dive into the budget. Let's dive into some of your expenses here. Thank you for sending some of this along ahead of time. We don't have to go line by line. You know how to do this at this point. This is your first budget, Mr. Kittner, but please do speak to some of the highlighted differences, including some expenses.
Yep. I'm sorry, Mayor. Absolutely. So I'll skip engineering for now. I think that's afterwards. But if we can just scroll down a little under Public Works right there. So salaries and wages were set by finance. If you don't have any questions, we can move on. The biggest change here is, it's highlighted in yellow, is road overlay. And in 2022, our department put down over 800 tons of asphalt, and it was done through an overlay, not pothole filling. So the difference is you're actually putting down a larger swath of asphalt that could cover, road damage, and it's a better way of controlling damage and better way of pothole filling. What this does is it actually extends the life of roads, 3, 4, 5 years until we could properly do a full reconstruction. We found it really worked well. So we're recommending this. I'm providing a budget of $80,000. That's consistent with what was done in 2022. And we're hopeful that we can implement this year. Moving down. Can you stop right there? I'm sorry. 291, road salt 202. Now, that budget was, when we first set that was closer to the beginning of the year and when the budget cycle was earlier. Given that we didn't expect Florida weather practically and climate change the way it has hit us, we could probably reduce that number to maybe $130,000 or $140,000. Salt prices have gone up about 20 to 25%. I originally thought it was more, but it's actually more like 20 to 25%. And that difference in the price, if we made it, let's say, 140,000 or 135,000, that would account for that difference and probably get us through the next 2 months. Moving down. Pretty consistent. In this case, we have 2 new line items under the utility department. If you recall, recently last year, we introduced the utility division, and it's made a tremendous difference in terms of our stormwater and sanitary resiliency during these storm events. The more attention is made towards these utilities. We decided to propose repairs to equipment. That line item is simply to repair our jet truck and other equipment that we use for sanitary sewers. We also have a contractual sewer utility line item for $15,000. That's primarily used for contractors who TV the lines people that we have to call in that we don't have the in-house talent for. Moving down. It's pretty consistent. Okay, can you stop right there? So 305, 306, 205, that includes the cost for our contractual services for collection. Okay, and 207 is the actual marketing component of the recycling. That number we anticipate will go down. We're actually getting a credit for the number 54 mixed paper, which is cardboard and mixed paper. But that's not reflected in that budget. You have to budget for the worst case scenario, which is a 0 credit for the material. It's a market and commodity which changes price. So we plan for the worst, but you know, I expect that number to be less. And in terms of,
I'm sorry, Paul, we didn't used to get money for that, right?
no, we never got money for that. And this year, that's part of the reason we went to dual stream, because we can now take advantage of that. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten enough invoices where I can give you any meaningful data as of right now, but I'm hopeful to report back to the committee in due time. Okay, moving down. Yeah, so this year we had a lot of our components go down in HVAC, and we found that because we had the bipolar ionization units, and as a result of COVID, the filters have to be changed more often. So HVAC maintenance, contractual, that's actually performing the maintenance of all the units in all of our buildings, replacing the belts, greasing all the bearings, and also changing out all the filters 4 times a year. The HVAC repair contractual, that's if a unit goes down, and you know, we had that happen quite a bit last year. So we put what we thought was enough money there. We also have budgets in our building maintenance accounts, 202 and also 201. One's for the police building, one's for all the other buildings. I think we bumped up the municipal buildings a little because you know, we found that there's a lot of infrastructure that's getting older, so we wanted to compensate for that and protect ourselves. Okay, moving down. You could stop right there. I'm looking for anything remarkable here. I think in the past we broke out the tree removals contracting and tree parts removal. That's consistent from last year, sections 211 and 212. Shade tree plants, we have $48,000. I also put in a open space trust fund request for additional plantings. That's to handle some of our parks that we lost trees at, but that, I think we're going over capital at another day. Okay, moving on.
Can I just ask a question here, since we're here?
Absolutely.
If you go to 375, 375, 205, park maintenance. Now we're adding 19,000 over what we budgeted, but we're way underneath what we actually spent. And then if you go to 209, we're budgeting 20,000 for DeHart, and we budgeted a lot more last year and spent only about 14,000. So how do those two lines interact? I mean, we've made a commitment to keep up DeHart Park. Is some of those costs going to be now in 205, or do we need to keep more money in 209?
So we have 209 should, in my opinion, we should maintain the 60,000. And the reason why last year's was not significant was because we handled a lot of it in-house under consultation with our tree expert, Scott Bills. So we actually did 2 rounds of sand slit drainage last year using a capital account for DeHart athletic field maintenance. This year, the 60,000 would actually be hiring a third party to maintain the field One thing I thought we didn't do well enough was control irrigation, stay on top of the rainfall events. I think we could do a better job, but I think we need some help. And I think that's the idea of the budget that we have there. In terms of the maintenance at $50,000, parks maintenance, I have no objection to increasing that to a larger line item. That item represents all the parks, the remaining parks in our township, not just DeHart. So I think it would be a good idea to increase that line item to the recommended amount. As you said before, last year we spent $81,000. So I would at least go with the recommendation from the finance, from our CFO. And, some of that money probably was spent on DeHart, which could have increased that amount slightly. And now we're going to be handling it using the 209 account with the 60,000. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could provide some clarification to that question.
Of course.
So looking at the park maintenance account, there's been internal discussions amongst administration about purchasing AED units for all the buildings and all the parks. The decision to make a recommendation to the TC about whether we're going to capitalize that or we're going to just put it in the operating budget hasn't been made yet. So the 69,000 in this particular case, the 19,000 would be to cover installing AEDs in 15 of our parks. Regarding the DeHart Athletic Field maintenance, in 2022, we predominantly charged the capital budget for the field renovation there. And that's where the money's been going. But the type of work we've been doing really isn't capital work. It really is operating expense. And so we were looking at trying to put it back here. I believe Mr. Schuster reduced it because we didn't spend nearly the amount of money that it looked like we spent. And during the budget discussions administratively, there wasn't an explanation as to why that drop-off came.
And just so we're clear, we do have additional monies left over in that capital line item. If we have to do another round, for example, of the sand sled drainage, there is additional money left over there.
Okay, thank you for the additional context. While we're here, and I'm sorry again for Mr. Kittner for interrupting your flow, but I see it right in front of me, the tennis court maintenance. Just for the public's edification, we're talking about operating here, not capital. That'll be another night. I know in your capital budget, you may have some requests for improvements to our tennis courts. We hear a lot about that. You've seen those emails. Can you just tell us what the maintenance entails?
So under this line item, Mayor, this is not per se a full resurfacing. This is making repairs to the tennis courts. It's crack filling, it's basic maintenance, de-weeding, that type of thing. It's not a full resurface. That would be under a capital line item.
Right. Okay. Just wanted to point that out.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Melissa Mancuso had put in some numbers in her capital budget for that purpose.
Okay, terrific. Okay, thank you. Please carry on with your other operating expenses here.
Sure. So moving on, do we have anything left or is that the end? I think that's the end.
Oh yeah, that is the end.
So that's it for DPW.
Okay, do we have any questions for Mr. Kittner on the DPW OE side? Ms. Adams.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The grass cutting seems, I have questions on 375, 208, and 210. The arborist services are significantly higher than they have been in the past. And I'd like to know what's driving that, and the grass cutting, if we're doing anything to, I mean, that's gone up a lot too, based on the actual of $15,000 less last year. So could you clarify anything with those and why those numbers seem kind of high to me?
So the grass cutting is simply, we included a little flat, if you will, in there simply because we're anticipating increased costs, due to inflation and also gas prices. So if you made it $55,000, it's probably okay. I'd rather be more conservative and have the additional money so that when we publicly bid this and we award this, we'll have sufficient funds. I tend to err on being a little more conservative. You had questions on 210, which is arborist services. That's to pay our tree expert, Scott Bills, who's currently Scott Bills. That's to pay his salaries and those associated costs. I think last year we budgeted 45,000.
And we spent 23 and change. And
Joe, do you have a reason why we wouldn't reduce this at all and compromise on this?
because historically, the last few years, it's much less than what's being budgeted.
Mhm.
I think maybe Mr. Riccardi would be able to better explain why this, or Mr. Haran would be able to better explain why we were asking for more money in this line.
Okay,
But
well-
I just feel that this was the request from the department.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
we'll circle back and look at it.
I'll try to get a clarification on that.
Yeah, because he's only in 1 day a week, so that's a big nut for a day a week. Right?
Yeah, you know what? He processes a lot of applications and then 1 day does a lot of work, but I'll.
No, I know. No, I'm not saying we don't pay him, but I'm just saying, it just seems off.
I'll circle back and get clarification on that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Sure.
I feel like I had something else, but I'm trying to scroll and see what it was. No, I think that's it.
I think that also covers, not that that's justifies the increase in the cost, but it also covers appeals when people have appeals for trees and.
Yeah, but still a lot. So just so we can get it more specific on it. I
Okay.
appreciate it. And then while you see, you gave me time to scroll back up. The Jitney services, are you budgeting as if it's full fleet of Jitneys as was like pre-COVID? Because I think that we kind of need to look at that. It's way up toward the top. Have a discussion on that as a governing body with regard to what our plans are and what the demand is with hybrid working and things like that.
Sure.
So we
So
really do
on-
need, sorry.
I'm sorry, on the Jitney salary and wages, the first column is based on taking all the employees who are assigned to that department and multiplying out what would be an annual salary. But the second column now takes into account what they actually, the number of hours they actually put in over the course of the year. But this is budgeted for as if we were running a Jitney pre-pandemic.
Right, that's what I think we need to have. I think we've talked about it a little bit at engineering, public works and planning, but perhaps we need to get some better numbers, not just from the Jitney service, but also from the clerk's office with regard to commuter parking permits and the usage of the available parking. So, because I don't know, it might just be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? That we need this, so it might change the numbers a little bit. I don't know that we're back at full level yet anyway for this coming year. So I think we could use some more information on that, or at least I could.
Okay, I'll circle back and get you more information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And we may have to adjust that.
What did you want from the clerk's office?
We just need some numbers, Ms. Fritzen, as to, a usage of, are all the commuter parking spaces being used up? I know there's some construction and other things that might mitigate that, but the amount of permits that are being requested and.
We can certainly go back to a year, prior to where we are, but numbers are certainly down, but it's getting better.
Right, it's just a whether we kind of have to, as a TC, figure out what service we're budgeting for and what service we need to provide. Or maybe we don't need to, or maybe, we look at rolling it back into full service over the course of a few years. And thus this might be an area we can budget less.
Okay.
Just to add to that, I think seeing percentages of how it's increased maybe since last summer to where it is now, because I feel like there's going to be another push this spring for people to go back in more days a week. At least that's what I'm seeing, right? It went from like 0 days to now 2, and now people are being pushed to go back maybe 3 or 4 days. So I'd be curious to see the percentage difference.
Yeah, that's why I asked for the numbers. So
Okay. We can
thanks.
check that out tomorrow. We can do, a couple of runs on it from summer to the present time.
Ms. Adams, I did speak with our head jitney driver and spoke to him about the service, and he felt that it was steady. It wasn't certainly going up in his opinion, but it was steady. So I'll try to get you more information on that end as well, and try to.
Yeah, and how many, just basically, we just kind of need to hash that out.
Sure.
And then recommend at engineering, probably best place to do it, and then bring it back to TC for discussion.
Okay. Very good.
Other questions about Public Works OE? Okay, we'll move on, Mr. Kittner, to engineering.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving on to engineering. So we're a small group. There's 4 people total, myself included. But I think we accomplished quite a bit for a small group of people. And the committee has in the past put their faith in us in terms of implementing these programs, and we take it very seriously. And we're thankful. We appreciate the faith that the committee puts in us to implement these various programs. I think in terms of our accomplishments, we got quite a few road improvements complete this year. We did well over 2 miles with the roadway. We tried getting some additional roads paved, but the weather just turned, such as Jacoby Street and 44th Street. But nonetheless, we still got quite a few roads paved. Portions of Boyden Ave, North Terrace, South Pearson, Vermont Street, Fernwood, Berkshire, Burroughs, Baker, Oakland Road, Oakland Terrace, Bowden, Crowell, Arcularias, and Meadowbrook Road. And then we reconstructed the Springfield Ave median as well. We worked on a number of different traffic calming projects because paving's one thing, but we want pedestrian traffic safety. We completed speed humps on Newark and Rutgers, Porter Road and Field. We completed sign upgrades for the underpass on Jefferson. And we worked on the Lexington Dead End Pilot Program, as well as the Tuscan and Burnett Right In, Right Out, among other programs as well. In terms of building improvements, we improved stormwater resiliency at the Woodland. We improved drainage there. We also finalized the front walkway improvements at Town Hall, including the architectural LED lighting. We completed plaster repairs in a large committee room and awarded roof repairs and started construction in the conference room roof as well in that building. In the municipal court and police building, we successfully advertised the uninterrupted power supply system replacement for both the court system as well as the police. And we also assisted with construction at the Memorial Library, including asbestos abatement and on-site assistance with construction and demo. We also assisted with various other departments such as fire, replacing their air conditioning units, etc. The municipal pool, we reconstructed the dive platform, and we worked on various utility and stormwater resiliency programs, including improving stormwater upgrades on Oakland Road in Bowden, and we finished the siphon on Boyden Avenue, the sanitary sewer siphon. We are in the process and started back in 2022, the abatement of the soils at DPW and completed the DPW fuel station project. We also implemented ADA improvements throughout the township. We worked on FEMA grants to address stormwater IDA, which resulted in nearly $3 million or so of funds that FEMA set aside for our projects. I think a portion of that was already paid. We did apply for DOT municipal aid projects. We just found out today that Springfield Avenue was awarded at the price of $476,000. We worked with other groups like Annette DePalma and Ms. DePalma and, won a Safe Routes to Schools project in the amount of $488,000. We continue to work on multiple grants. We applied for the Biden Build Back Better program to handle stormwater and sanitary sewer systems, and also for 60 Woodland Road. So we also improved our AutoCAD base map of the entire township so we can make our road programs more efficient and cost effective. In terms of goals, we want to find more money and apply for more grant funding, reduce the costs here. And that's one thing we're going to push hard for. And there's a lot of money out there. So I know, Mary, you've been a proponent of that, and you've led the way with that. So we're going to continue that. We're going to continue to integrate both the DPW and engineering departments. We're going to complete drainage improvements at Meadowbrook and Maple Terrace. We're going to complete the paving project at Lexington and Jacoby and 44th. We're going to complete design of next year's CDBG program, or it's actually 2022, which gets designed now. And we're going to complete roof repairs for the Civic House and Hilton Library. We actually have plans right now for both buildings, which we're about to advertise. We want to improve the township's stormwater and sanitary resiliency with climate change. We're going to finalize the bridge improvements at Memorial Park for the Duck Pond Bridge. We're going to finish an ADA ramp improvement at the senior building. And we'd like to move forward and design and perhaps even start the Safe Routes to Schools project, which includes a number of different high-intensity beacons at roughly 60 of these push-button beacons for improving pedestrian safety throughout our township. And lastly, we're going to continue to administer the FEMA projects so that we get full reimbursement from that agency. Any questions on that?
Any questions for Mr. Kittner on his narrative for engineering goals? I see none, Mr. Kittner.
Okay, moving on to the costs. This is a really tough one here. Half a page. This is pretty consistent. I think the biggest difference here is line item 165, 165, 215, where we're actually implementing professional services. We're going to try to pay for this using an expense account rather than a capital account. Did I describe that properly, Mr. Kaluja?
That sounds pretty good.
Okay. So that's really the biggest difference. I think all the other costs kind of fall in line.
Okay. Any questions for these line items, these expenses on the engineering side? I see none. Any final thoughts, Mr. Kittner?
I just want to thank the committee for continuing to have faith in us and invest in us as a group. I think I have an incredible team. I'm so proud of them, and they do just a great job in terms of getting work done and working for our township. So that's our goal, is to get as much done as we can in a quality manner and to serve the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kittner. As you can see, we built a lot more time here into your presentations. Originally, we were going to add capital tonight, but I made the decision to do capital separately on another evening. because I foresee a good discussion about some of the capital requests, right?
Absolutely.
And tough decisions and a lot of back and forth. And we're certainly not going to begin that at 9 p.m. tonight after all of us have worked a full day, including our professionals and department heads and employees here with us tonight. So any questions for Mr. Kittner? All right, I see none. All right, so at this point, we have a public comment session. I want to thank everyone who joined us out there, who's watching us on YouTube, who came here maybe to ask a question or relay a remark. You've just witnessed and heard the discussion related to the operating expenses for certain departments. Tomorrow night, we're going to do the same with the rest of our departments and a couple of community groups that are co-sponsored, co-funded by the township. And then we will have another session to go over our capital expenses, and that'll get us closer to adopting our new budget. We're certainly on schedule this year and so much better place than we were last year this time. So I'm confident that we will get to a budget that makes sense for Maplewood and for all of our taxpayers in the next couple of months, if not earlier. All right, so now we have a public comment period. Mr. Waltz, will you take over?
Good evening, Mayor and Township Committee. We will now begin the only public comment portion of this meeting. If any meeting attendee would like to address the Township Committee, please use the raise your hand function. We'll convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak. Would anybody like to address the committee at this time? I see no one, Mayor.
Let's give it a minute. There are some people there. Maybe they didn't have the chance to raise their hand. Anyone? You still see no one, Mr. Waltz?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Well, then we will close the public comment period. Thank you all again. I move that we adjourn and reconvene tomorrow night, same place, starting at 6 p.m. again.
Second.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Ms. Cripe,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Ms. Engel,
Yes.
Mayor Daffis.
Yes. Thank you all and good night.